Have you ever wondered why some people are never truly defeated, no matter how hard the world tries to erase them? History isn't always controlled by the strongest people. Sometimes it's controlled by the loudest voices. They don't need to destroy your truth if they can simply bury it beneath endless distractions, fake narratives, and carefully crafted opinions. The moment your potential becomes dangerous, the story suddenly changes. You're no longer the hero, they paint you as the problem. But what if that's exactly how every powerful person is tested? What if the attacks against you aren't proof that you're failing, but proof that you're becoming impossible to control? Stay until the end, because the final lesson may completely change the way you see criticism, rejection, and your own hidden power. If you're ready to develop an unbreakable mindset and see beyond manipulation, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and let's begin. There comes a moment in every extraordinary life when applause quietly disappears. At first, nothing seems different. The same people smile at you. The same conversations continue. The same world keeps moving. But beneath the surface, something has changed. Your growth has started making people uncomfortable. Your confidence reminds insecure people of everything they refuse to become. Your discipline exposes excuses. Your courage exposes fear. And without realizing it, you've entered a completely different game. Most people think success attracts support. In reality, success first attracts resistance. Human psychology has always worked this way. People naturally celebrate potential because potential doesn't threaten anyone. But the moment that potential becomes reality, everything changes. Your progress forces people to compare their lives to yours. Some become inspired. Others become intimidated. The difference has nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with their mindset. This is why your biggest battles often begin after your greatest breakthroughs. Imagine climbing a mountain. The higher you climb, the stronger the wind becomes. The wind isn't personal. It simply reaches higher places. Success works exactly the same way. The higher your standards rise, the greater the pressure becomes. The criticism becomes louder. The misunderstandings become more frequent. People begin forming opinions about a life they've never lived. The average person responds emotionally. The strong-minded person responds strategically. One of the greatest mistakes people make is believing every attack deserves an answer. It doesn't. Not every accusation deserves your attention. Not every opinion deserves your energy. Not every misunderstanding deserves your explanation. Emotionally intelligent people understand something powerful. Attention is a form of currency. Where you spend it determines the quality of your future. Every minute spent defending yourself against people committed to misunderstanding you is one less minute invested in becoming the person you're capable of becoming. That's why truly dangerous people rarely waste time arguing. They build. While others gossip, they improve. While others complain, they create. While others chase approval, they master themselves. This mindset confuses people. The world expects immediate reactions. It expects emotional outbursts. It expects anger. But calmness has always been one of the rarest forms of strength. Think about a deep ocean. Its surface may experience violent storms, but thousands of feet below, everything remains still. Strong minds operate exactly the same way. Chaos may exist around them, but inside, there is direction. This doesn't mean they don't feel pain. It means they refuse to let pain become their identity. Every great transformation begins with one difficult realization. You cannot control the stories people tell about you, but you can control the story you tell yourself. The moment you stop depending on public approval, something extraordinary happens. Fear loses its grip, because most fear comes from one place, the fear of losing acceptance. Once that disappears, manipulation loses its power. This is why independent thinkers are often misunderstood. Not because they're wrong, but because they cannot be controlled through praise or criticism. Their decisions no longer depend on applause. They depend on purpose. Purpose is dangerous. Purpose cannot be bribed. Purpose cannot be distracted forever. Purpose keeps moving even when nobody believes in it. History has always remembered people who stayed committed to purpose while everyone else chased popularity. Popularity changes every season. Purpose survives generations. As you begin understanding this, another truth quietly appears. The loudest attacks are rarely directed toward weak people. Nobody wastes his energy trying to stop someone who isn't moving. Resistance often follows momentum. Pressure often follows growth. Opposition often follows influence. That doesn't mean every criticism is false. Wise people still reflect, they still learn, they still improve. But they never allow other people's opinions to become the foundation of their identity. Because identity built on public approval collapses the moment public opinion changes. Identity built on character becomes almost impossible to destroy. There will always be voices trying to define who you are. Some will underestimate you. Others will exaggerate your mistakes. Some will quietly hope you fail because your success forces them to confront their own comfort. Don't fight every voice. Outgrow them. Nothing silences doubt more effectively than undeniable progress. And here's the fascinating part. The moment you stop trying to win every argument, you finally gain enough energy to win your future. That's the hidden shift most people never understand. The real battle was never against the voices outside your mind. It was always against the one inside that keeps asking, what if they're right? Once you defeat that voice, nobody else can truly control you. And that's where the next transformation begins. Because the greatest form of power isn't learning how to fight your enemies. It's learning why they needed you to doubt yourself in the first place. There is something the world never tells you about manipulation. It doesn't begin with lies. It begins with doubt. The most dangerous people don't always attack your reputation. They attack your confidence. They understand a simple psychological truth. A person who doubts themselves will eventually surrender without anyone having to defeat them. That's why the first battle is always fought inside your own mind. Think about every major breakthrough in history. Every person who challenged the accepted way of thinking was called unrealistic before they were called revolutionary. They were ignored before they were criticized. They were criticized before they were respected. The pattern never changes. Only the names do. The reason is simple. Human beings naturally protect familiarity. Anything that challenges the current system feels like a threat, even when it's beneficial. This isn't always evil, it's psychology. The brain is designed to conserve energy and avoid uncertainty. New ideas require effort. Different perspectives force people to question beliefs they've held for years. And questioning deeply held beliefs is uncomfortable. So instead of changing their beliefs, many people attack the person presenting them. This is called cognitive dissonance. When reality conflicts with someone's existing worldview, they often reject reality before they reject their beliefs. That's why some of the loudest criticism you'll ever receive has nothing to do with your actions. It has everything to do with what your actions remind other people about themselves. Your discipline reminds them of their excuses. Your courage reminds them of their fear. Your consistency reminds them of the promises they abandoned. Without saying a word, you become a mirror, and people don't always like what they see. The Joker philosophy isn't about creating chaos. It's about refusing to wear masks just to make everyone else comfortable. Most people spend their entire lives performing. They perform confidence. They perform happiness. They perform success. They perform kindness. Not because they're fake, but because they're terrified of rejection. Eventually, they become so attached to the performance that they forget who they really are. That's one of the greatest psychological prisons imaginable. Living a life designed for approval instead of purpose. The strongest minds eventually escape that prison. Not by becoming emotionless, but by becoming honest. They stop asking, "What will people think?" and begin asking, "Can I respect myself if I ignore what I know is true?" That question changes everything. Because self-respect grows every time you choose integrity over popularity. Imagine standing alone in a dark room with nothing except your own thoughts. No applause, no criticism, no social media, no headlines, no validation, just you. Would you still believe in your mission? Would you still work toward your goals? Would you still become the person you're trying to become? If the answer is yes, congratulations. You've reached a level most people never experience. Because your motivation no longer depends on attention. It depends on identity. Identity is far more powerful than motivation. Motivation disappears. Identity remains. A motivated person exercises when they feel inspired. A disciplined person exercises because that's who they are. A motivated person tells the truth when it's easy. A person with character tells the truth even when it costs them everything. This is why systems built on manipulation fear people with strong identities. You cannot threaten someone who already knows who they are. You cannot confuse someone who has already accepted their values. You cannot distract someone whose purpose is stronger than temporary emotions. Pressure loses its influence. Noise loses its volume. Fear loses its authority. And slowly, your enemies begin making a mistake they never intended. Every attack meant to weaken you becomes another reason for you to grow stronger. Every insult becomes fuel. Every rejection becomes preparation. Every obstacle becomes training. The irony is beautiful. The very pressure designed to destroy you slowly creates the strongest version of yourself. Think about a diamond. It isn't valuable because it avoided pressure. It's valuable because it survived it. Human character develops exactly the same way. Comfort rarely creates greatness. Resistance does. Failure does. Loneliness does. Discipline does. Most people pray for easier lives. The strongest people build stronger minds. Because they understand a secret the average person never learns. Life doesn't become easier. You become harder to break. Once that realization settles into your heart, something remarkable happens. You stop chasing revenge. You stop obsessing over proving people wrong. You stop trying to win every argument. Instead, you become obsessed with becoming undeniable. Success becomes your response. Growth becomes your statement. Peace becomes your victory. People expect you to fight them. They never expect you to outgrow them. And that's exactly why growth is the most powerful form of rebellion. Because nobody can argue with results. Nobody can rewrite consistent excellence. Nobody can permanently hide authentic character. Eventually, reality always catches up with perception. But before that day arrives, there's one final psychological trap almost everyone falls into. A trap far more dangerous than criticism, far more destructive than rejection. A trap so subtle that millions spend their entire lives inside it without ever realizing they're imprisoned. There is one prison more dangerous than criticism. It has no walls, no chains, no locked doors. Yet millions of people spend their entire lives trapped inside it. The prison is called seeking permission. Permission to dream, permission to speak, permission to succeed, permission to become someone greater than the version everyone has grown comfortable with. Most people never realize they're living for approval instead of purpose. Every decision passes through one question. What will they think? That single question quietly destroys more potential than failure ever could, because failure teaches. Approval addiction controls. Psychologists describe human beings as social creatures, and that's true. We naturally crave acceptance because, for thousands of years, belonging meant survival. Being rejected by the tribe often meant death. But the modern world has changed. Today, many people aren't surviving, they're performing. They choose careers to impress strangers. They hide their opinions to avoid criticism. They stay in relationships that drain them simply because leaving would disappoint other people. Without realizing it, they become actors in a story someone else is directing. And then something extraordinary happens. One day they wake up. Not because life suddenly becomes easier, but because pretending becomes more painful than being judged. That's the day transformation begins. Strong minds understand something most people never discover. Freedom isn't having everyone agree with you. Freedom is no longer needing them to. Imagine an eagle. Does it ask permission from the crows before flying above the storm? No. Because the eagle understands something the crows never will. Different heights create different perspectives. The higher your thinking rises, the fewer people can understand your vision. That's why loneliness often accompanies greatness. Not because successful people hate others, but because very few people are willing to think beyond ordinary limits. History proves this over and over again. Every revolutionary idea sounded ridiculous before it became obvious. Every remarkable leader looked strange before they looked inspirational. Every extraordinary achievement was criticized before it was celebrated. The crowd almost always arrives late. That's why wise people stop measuring themselves by public opinion. Public opinion changes every week. Character doesn't. Another psychological shift begins here. You stop trying to convince people you're different. You simply become different. There is tremendous power in silent progress. While others announce every plan, you quietly execute yours. While they debate possibilities, you build realities. While they chase attention, you master consistency. Consistency is terrifying to people who rely on temporary motivation. Because consistency cannot be manipulated by emotions. It continues every day, every season, every setback, every disappointment, every victory, without needing applause. Eventually something fascinating happens. People begin asking, "How did you become so confident?" The answer surprises them. Confidence wasn't built through praise. It was built through promises. Promises you made to yourself. Promises you actually kept. Every time you said you'd wake up early, and did. Every time you said you'd continue despite failure, and did. Every time you said you'd choose discipline over comfort, and did. Each small promise became another brick. Eventually, those bricks became unshakable confidence. Real confidence isn't believing you'll never fail. It's knowing failure won't stop you. That's why criticism loses its power. Because criticism can only damage borrowed confidence. It cannot destroy confidence built through experience. Then comes another realization. The people trying hardest to define your identity usually haven't discovered their own. People who know themselves don't waste energy controlling others. They build, they grow, they inspire. Control is often the language of insecurity. Freedom is the language of wisdom. Once you understand this, compassion replaces anger. You no longer hate those who misunderstand you. You simply recognize they're fighting battles inside themselves. Battles with fear, comparison, and regret, and unresolved pain. Understanding this doesn't excuse harmful behavior, but it frees you from carrying unnecessary bitterness, because resentment keeps you emotionally connected to the very people you're trying to outgrow. Strong minds refuse that connection. Instead, they invest their emotional energy somewhere far more valuable: the future. Every hour spent replaying yesterday is an hour stolen from tomorrow. That's why emotionally intelligent people eventually become obsessed with one thing: forward movement, not perfection. Progress, tiny improvements, daily discipline, continuous growth. They understand a simple law of life. The person who improves by 1% every day eventually becomes impossible to recognize. Transformation rarely arrives dramatically. It happens quietly. One habit, one decision. One disciplined morning, one difficult conversation. One uncomfortable choice at a time. Then one day, people call you lucky. They never saw the years nobody applauded, the sacrifices nobody noticed, the discipline nobody celebrated. They only see the result, never the process. And that's perfectly fine, because by then, you've stopped needing recognition. You've become addicted to becoming better. That addiction changes everything. It creates peace, purpose, freedom. But there's one final lesson, the most powerful lesson of all. It explains why the strongest people never seek revenge, never beg for acceptance, and never fear walking alone. Because they've discovered something far greater than victory over other people. They've discovered victory over themselves. And that's exactly where our journey ends. There comes a moment when you realize the greatest victory was never proving your enemies wrong. It was proving your old self wrong. The version of you that once needed approval. The version that feared rejection. The version that stayed silent just to keep everyone comfortable. That person slowly disappears, and in their place stands someone who no longer asks for permission to exist. This is the final evolution of a powerful mind. You stop seeing yourself as a victim of circumstances. You become the author of your own story. The world has always rewarded people who follow instructions. Stay quiet, fit in. Don't ask questions. Don't challenge the system. Don't think differently. But every breakthrough in history began with someone who refused to obey those invisible rules. Not because they wanted chaos, because they wanted truth. The strongest minds understand that freedom isn't given. It's built, brick by brick, choice by choice, day by day. Every difficult decision strengthens your identity. Every uncomfortable conversation sharpens your character. Every setback teaches resilience. And every betrayal reminds you to trust your principles instead of temporary emotions. That's why pressure is never your enemy. Pressure is a mirror. It reveals who you really are when comfort disappears. Anyone can appear confident when life is easy. Anyone can smile when everything goes according to plan. But when the pressure arrives, when the criticism becomes louder, when people misunderstand your intentions, when doors begin closing, that's when your true identity is revealed. Most people react. Powerful people respond. Reaction is emotional. Response is intentional. Reaction gives your power away. Response keeps your purpose alive. This is why silence is often misunderstood. Silence isn't surrender. Silence is discipline. It's refusing to waste energy on battles that don't deserve your attention. It's understanding that not every attack requires a defense. Some people desperately want a reaction because your reaction becomes their victory. The moment they control your emotions, they control your direction. Never give anyone that power. The Joker mindset isn't about becoming heartless, it's about becoming impossible to manipulate. When you no longer need constant validation, no one can use praise against you. When you no longer fear criticism, no one can use fear against you. When you no longer chase acceptance, no one can control your identity. That is real freedom. And freedom always intimidates people who depend on control. One of the greatest psychological truths is this: people cannot imprison a mind that has already learned to think independently. They may attack your reputation, they may question your motives, they may misunderstand your intentions, but they cannot destroy your character unless you abandon it yourself. Never forget that. Character is built in private. Reputation is created in public. One belongs to you. The other belongs to strangers. Protect the one you control, ignore the one you don't. Eventually something fascinating happens. The same people who laughed begin watching. The same people who doubted begin wondering. The same people who ignored your vision begin asking how you did it, not because they suddenly changed, because your consistency became impossible to deny. That's why discipline always defeats distraction. Truth always outlives deception. Purpose always survives pressure. Time has a way of exposing everything. False narratives eventually collapse under their own weight. Temporary fame disappears, manipulation fades, but integrity compounds. Every honest decision becomes another brick in the foundation of your future. And one day you look back, not with anger, not with revenge, not even with regret, only gratitude, because every betrayal taught discernment, every rejection created independence, every hardship built resilience, every criticism strengthened conviction. Without those storms, you would never have discovered the strength hiding inside you. Perhaps that's the greatest lesson of all. Your enemies never created your power, they revealed it. The pressure didn't destroy you, it introduced you to the person you were always capable of becoming. So the next time the world misunderstands you, don't panic. The next time people doubt you, don't explain. The next time your path feels lonely, keep walking. Remember this: lions never lose sleep over the opinions of sheep, mountains never lower themselves because someone refuses to climb, and the sun never asks permission to rise. Neither should you. Walk with purpose, speak with conviction, build with discipline. Let your actions become louder than every accusation. Let your consistency become stronger than every lie. Let your character become so undeniable that time itself becomes your greatest witness, because in the end, the people who tried to silence you won't be remembered for their noise. They'll be remembered as the background to your success. Your story was never written by critics. It was written by your choices. And no one can rewrite the story of a person who refuses to surrender their purpose. If this message awakens something inside you, don't let it end here. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs to hear these words today. Leave it in the comments if you've decided to stop seeking permission and start living with purpose. Remember, the strongest mind isn't the loudest in the room, it's the one that remains unshaken when the entire world demands it should fall. And in the next chapter, you'll discover exactly what it is, and why escaping it makes you mentally untouchable.